What was the mood of the team? Here's Jason Anderson, Sac Bee Sports Editor, Kings beat reporter. Thanks for your time, Jason. How would you describe the players' state of mind after that, whatever that was last night?
Well, it was tough. It was tough. The mood in the room was not real good. They were kind of shell shocked by what happened. To blow a 22-point lead over the last 8 minutes was rough. Malik had some choice words when he kind of uttered. He came into the locker room to get dressed, kind of uttered some words, and then I had a chat with him. He was pretty upset. Pointed the finger at himself to some extent with the turnovers. And I know everybody's talking about De'Aaron and kind of where he was at, and it was tough to he had this look in his eyes, and he just kind of sat there. He declined to speak like early on, like he's still in uniform, and usually we'll wait that out. But they're on a long road trip and trying to get home. I kind of asked him, if he wanted to talk real quick, and he just sort of waved me off at that point. And so I waited and wanted to catch him after he had a chance to shower and get dressed and get ready to go. And even after all that time, you just kind of watch him sit there in the corner by himself, just absolutely silent. Didn't say a word to anybody, and just all by himself and his thoughts, whatever he was, however he was processing that internally. And then, as he got up to leave, I asked again if we could talk for a minute, and again he just kind of waved me off and left the room. And I'm a little concerned about him. These are tough losses. I don't want to overreact to any one loss, even as bad as that is. But he's been going through it lately. He had a little bit of a downturn where I was a little worried about where he was at physically, with some of the bumps and bruises that you get over the course of a season. Seems to be, played pretty well last night. What did he get, 32, I want to say. And, I think maybe he's coming through some of that. They're going to have, after this Indy game, there's 3 days off, which I think is going to be really good for them. And maybe him in particular to kind of get over some of that stuff. If it's still lingering, it's not going to go away. But anyway, I've been worried about him on the physical side of things a little bit. And now, just after seeing, last night, I'm, a little bit worried about the mental side too. I can't tell you what he was thinking or what that was, because he didn't talk to us and didn't explain, kind of how he was looking at the situation. But, definitely a dour mood in the room last night. And for good reason. That was a tough way to lose a game.
Jason Anderson, Sacramento Bee, joining us, the only local reporter on site there in Phoenix last night, asking the tough questions. Jason, when you look at what happened the last two games, what stands out to you the most? Because one of the things Whitey and I were talking about is the team's lack of poise. And I feel like last year they showed a lot of poise down the stretch. That's why De'Aaron Fox was the clutch player of the year. This year, at times, especially recently, these last two games, they have a lack of poise. Is that what you're seeing, and what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's true. It's what's really frustrating for them, I think, is that, I mean, they played so well. I mean, they were sitting there at the half with like 23 assists and 3 turnovers, I think. I mean, it was just they were just playing beautiful basketball, moving the ball really well, shooting it well. They even locked in a little bit on defense and had the Suns down around 41, 42% shooting for a while. And, things were going pretty well. I think the same was true in the Milwaukee game. They had, they played a really good game to be in it with those guys. Let's not forget these are good teams. Phoenix had their big three. It was the first time the Kings had seen them at full strength. So tough teams. They played well for, depending on which game you're looking at. Last night it was, 40 minutes. They played really well, certainly well enough to win the game. And then, just somehow found a way to blow it in right there at the end. So, yeah, I think there are lapses for sure. They felt like there were similarities between those two losses and the lapses, the defensive lapses in particular. And so, yeah, there's some of that. And I don't, it's kind of hard to put a finger on it exactly. I think some of this is personnel and matchups. I was sitting there last night. I had a whole Kings win story ready to go that, there are teams that have given the Kings matchup problems, but the Suns aren't one of them because they were about to go to 3-0 against those guys. And then all of a sudden just the wheels fall off and it was a matchup thing as it turned out. Mike was a little bit, I don't know. He was looking for answers and couldn't find them with the personnel and the groups he was putting out on the floor. The Suns went small, put KD at center, and it was going so badly that Mike he took Domas out. I mean, that's one of your best guys, and you feel like you can't have him on the floor in a situation like that because you don't want him to get switched off on Booker and all this stuff. But then that didn't go well, and he immediately had to put him back in, and they just had to ride with it and see what they could do. And, in the end, it just wasn't quite enough.
Jason Anderson with us from the Bee, of course, great Kings coverage, sacbee.com. 2 bitter losses in a row, Jason. Do they change the Kings' wants or needs at the deadline or perhaps change the sense of urgency over the need to make some kind of move here before the deadline?
I think there is some a sense of urgency. I think, they would like to make a move sooner than later. For a number of reasons. One, you get more games with whoever you're going to try to bring in and solidify your lineup and your rotation. But it takes two to make a trade, and you got to find a good partner who's going to make a deal with you. And then the other side of that is that for those teams that are sellers, it's in their best interest a lot of times to wait until the deadline gets closer. Just because it puts them in more of a position of leverage and being able to make sure they're getting the best deal for themselves. So they're in a little bit of a tough spot there. I think everybody's feeling that from the front office on down, coaches, players. They say all the right things. I had some conversations last night with some people about just all the chatter and the trade talk around this team. Just how disruptive that can be. And, for the most part, they said, no, we're, it goes with the territory. We're pros. We're not thinking about that stuff. But they're also human beings. Sure. And, sometimes we forget that. These are their lives and their families and their homes and all these things. And it has to be weighing on the minds of at least a few of them.
Jason Anderson, Sac Bee, joining us on the Drive, guys, Sactown Sports 1140. Jason, we had a discussion earlier, and it's something I noticed the last couple of games. Mike Brown, his guard rotation has been really short lately. Yeah. Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter, and De'Aaron Fox. Only 3 guards in the Milwaukee game, only 3 guards in the Phoenix game. What do you make of that?
Well, he again, I think it goes back to him searching for answers and trying to find the right groups. I mean, we went for a while there. Of course, Alex Lynn was hurt at that time, but it was a lot of Chris Duarte and Keon Ellis and JaVale instead of Alex, and even Juan Toscano Anderson was getting some minutes there for a few games. And then, certainly these last couple, it's been very obvious that he has tightened it up. And now it's Malik, it's Trey, it's Sasha, it's Alex Lynn at the 5. He played 9 guys last night, and that was it. And I think the game before that, for quite a bit of the game, it was like 8 guys that he rolled with. Yeah. So, he's tightening things up. His comments last night were really interesting. I would encourage everybody. I put as much of that stuff as I could into my story because I thought him talking about how, they've faced certain matchup problems and things have been giving them trouble in the past and how they've got to figure it out because teams are going to keep doing this. They've done it to us before. They're going to do it again. I think his comments are are really interesting. I don't want to over analyze. He said what he said very clearly. But I do think you can read between the lines a little bit there sometimes. I think he feels like they need something, and I think a lot of people feel like they need something. Going back to my previous point, there are guys in that locker room who know they're looking, even if they're a good team, they're looking for ways to maybe upgrade it at one or two spots. It's starting to look like they may need to do that. I mean, they're 7th now, and I talked about this before the season. They could be as good or even a little better than last year and still win fewer games and or not finish as high in the standings just because teams around them get better. And we've seen that with like Minnesota and OKC and others. So that's kind of the situation they're dealing with. And if they want to stay up in the mix for home court advantage and at this point just being locked into an automatic bid, they're either going to have to find a way to be more consistent and more effective with the group that they have, or they're going to have to find a way to add to that before the trade deadline.
Very interesting, Jason. We appreciate it. Make sure you check out his story, all his stories on the Kings, Sacbee.com. See you tomorrow night. We appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Anytime, guys. Have a good day.
How about that? So some very interesting comments there from Jason Anderson. We will sift through those. Also, we'll look at the Kings and ask the question, did they lack leadership down the stretch last night?
Let's talk about
more
that
with the Drive guys when we continue here on Sactown Sports.